Hey everyone, my name is Dan Bubniak. I am an EOS implementer, and I'm working with your leadership team right now to go through the process to implement EOS within your business. And you're probably aware of that. You've probably heard about EOS at this point and are thinking, what the heck is EOS? So that's what I'm here for, right? I'm going to bring you through the process. What is the leadership team going through? What is the tools in the toolbox? Why do we do this? And then how does it work? How do we bring it into your departments and into your teams? And so we're going to go through a slide deck. This should be about 45 minutes to an hour, and it's going to go through the comprehensive toolbox of, again, what is EOS and how do we use these tools to get better within our business today. So I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to just jump right in. All right. Here we go. All right, so EOS. So EOS, we take the assumption that every business grows the same way, right? Every business goes through a period of evolution and then they hit a ceiling, right? So as businesses grow, they grow, and then they get stuck, right? And they hit a ceiling. Now, you've seen this out there in kind of public companies today. You've seen some companies hitting the ceiling recently, like Disney or Starbucks recently has hit a ceiling. Well, small companies do that as well, where kind of in the early days, you have a lot of, a founder kind of creates a business out of nothing, grows and grows and grows, and then gets stuck and they need help and they need to figure out how do they put more structure in their business? How do they hire employees? How do we get those employees to work together and learn the processes of the business? So all businesses grow the same way, where they grow and then they hit a ceiling. And when they hit that ceiling, either they get stuck, they kind of stagnate, they fall, or they learn how to break through and get to the next level. When then they break through, they go through a period of evolution again, where they grow until they hit that next ceiling. And maybe that next ceiling could be things have gotten too complicated, or there's too much red tape, or they need to create more clarity in the business on who needs to do what and what people are accountable for, or what matters in the business. And so we go through these periods of evolution, ceiling, and then revolution, where we're breaking through that ceiling. And ultimately, what we're trying to do in EOS is give businesses the tool set to recognize when they are at the ceiling. What do we need to change? What are the things we need to put in place to give us the structure to break through that ceiling? And so at its core, EOS is just a tool set, right? It's a couple of tools that we're going to put in place in a business that, again, allow us to figure out what are the things that we need to focus on? What are the areas of the business that we need to strengthen to allow us to continue growing, right? So that's what we're doing here. And on this first slide here, again, EOS takes the concept that all businesses deal with 150 problems every single day, right? It's a game of whack-a-mole where you're running your business, you're running your teams, right? You're down in the weeds and you're doing the work, and issues continuously pop up and you're reacting to them. Now, what the stance is on EOS is those 150 issues, they're really just symptoms of weakness of one of 6 areas of the business. And so rather than us play whack-a-mole, where we're just whacking them all down and another 2 or 3 pop up, we take the stance, let's strengthen 6 areas of the business. And if we could focus on strengthening these 6, those 150 issues, they melt away, right? Because again, they're symptomatic of weakness. So the first of the 6, I'm going to go through what each of the 6 key components are in the business that we need to strengthen. I'm going to start at a high level. What are each of the 6? And then I'm going to go down. You'll see 2 bullets here. The second time I go down the chain, we'll go into what tools do we actually put in place that, again, you guys will start to see and hear and feel. What tools do we put in place to actually strengthen each of the 6? So the first 6 key component is vision. So ultimately, how do we create one clear vision for the future? Where is this business going and how is it going to get there? And when we can establish that, we want everyone in the business to understand that, right? To want to be a part of that, to buy in, to internalize it. So that's how we create vision. The second of the 6 key components is people. So defining what a great person looks like in your business, right? Within your business, within your department, within your teams, what is a great person, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that somebody at a competitor who's successful is automatically going to be competitive in your business, because you're a different business, right? You guys have different personalities, different values, different products and services. So we need to define what a great person looks like in your business. The third key component is data. So we want to start making decisions off facts and figures, not egos, opinions, and emotions. And so when you get really strong at these first 3 components, the issues kind of bubble to the top. They kind of jump out at you, right? Maybe what are some of the people issues we're dealing with within our teams, or what are the data issues, right? Where are we seeing kind of our numbers falling on and off track? And your issues jump out at you. And so what we want to do is we want to create a culture where we can take these issues out of our head and get them onto paper, get them in front of us, learn how to have an open dialogue on those things, get to the root of them and knock them down forever, right? We don't get frustrated solving the same issues month over month, quarter over quarter. We want to get good at solving issues, getting to the root and knocking those things down forever. Which brings us to the fifth key component, which is process. So process, what we want to do is make sure we're doing the most important things the right and best way every single time, right? So that creates scalability, that makes things easier to manage. It makes things much more consistent for our employees, for our customers. So that's what we're trying to do with process. And lastly, the sixth key component is traction. So traction is all about creating accountability, discipline, and focus within the business, right? And traction sits right beneath vision for a reason, because it's easy to create a vision, right? To say, this is the clouds, the pie in the sky, where we want to go in the business. But then to create the habits within the business, that accountability, that focus and discipline, that's not easy, right? And that's what gaining traction is. We got to get strong in traction to make that vision real. And so those are the six key components in EOS. And we're going to work in this process. We're working with the leadership team and we're starting to roll this stuff out now. What we're here to do is get strong in these six key components. And if we can do that, we should be able to break through any ceiling that we're at, whether that's the company being at a ceiling, a department being at a ceiling, an individual being at a ceiling. These tools, these disciplines should allow us to break through that ceiling and get to the next level. So now when we're going through this process, again, our goal is to get strong in these six, and we're going to measure how strong we are on a scale of 0 to 100%. I know it's kind of subjective, but there's a little science behind it. And ultimately, the take on EOS is if we can just get to 80% strong in these six key components, you should be able to do whatever you want in your business. The reality is that most companies, they're operating at 20%, right? That's real. I ran a business prior to this. My company was definitely running at 20% in these six. And you can run a good business, but ultimately you're going to get stuck at a ceiling. You're going to feel like you're on a hamster wheel eventually. And really, you're not necessarily going to have the tools or focus to kind of break through your ceilings and get to the next level. So again, our goal, within our leadership team, the work that we're doing here through this process is to get 80% strong in these six key components. Now, how do we actually do that? So I'm going to go through each of the six key components a little bit deeper. And this is going to be the tools that we put in place to get 80% strong in each of the six. So the first key component is vision. So we want to create one clear vision for the future. Where's this company going and how is it going to get there? The first discipline that we're going to put in place that going to allow us to do that is called the 8 questions. Now, you may have heard this by now, right? This is housed in a tool called the Vision Traction Organizer. And these 8 questions, again, I'm going to go through each of the 8, but these are going to be housed in a 2-page document that kind of lives at the center of everything we do in our business, called the Vision Traction Organizer. So the first question that we need to answer is, what are our core values? So these are the defining set of essential characteristics that ultimately tell us what we want out of our culture. Who is going to be a successful person in our business, and maybe who isn't? And so the way that we're going to do that is we've discovered what our core values are. What are those kind of non-negotiable behaviors in our business that really everybody needs to exhibit? And again, we go through that process. These ultimately tell us who is the right person in this business, who's the right type of person in this business. And maybe, the reality is some businesses have a different personality type than people, right? I've worked with businesses in the past. I've been in businesses in the past where my personality was just different than the way that business operated. And that's okay, right? We don't want people to be prisoners in their own companies. We want people to be around people and have the kind of culture fit in a company that resonates with them. So we're going to define what our core values are, make sure that we're attracting more people who fit those and want to display those values. And maybe, again, help people that don't necessarily fit within those set of values, find a place maybe outside this business where they can fit within, where those other companies resonate more of the values that they hold within. The second question of the 8 questions is, what is our core focus, which is ultimately, why does this company exist and what are they best in the world at? So this is going to allow us to define that sweet spot for the business. Where should this company stay focused, right? We want to make sure, like like a baseball bat, like a tennis racket, when you hit a ball on the sweet spot, it goes further faster. It's the same thing in your business. What are we the best in the world at? And we want to make sure all the decisions we're making really align to that. That allows us to stay focused and move much further, much faster. The third question is, what is the company's 10-year target? So this is the number one long-term goal for the business, which is ultimately telling us where are we going, right? Like where are we headed long-term so we can make sure that everybody is pointed in that direction. The fourth question is, what is our marketing strategy? And what we're trying to do with defining our marketing strategy is tell us, where should we be spending our sales and marketing resources? We have a finite amount of resources and focus. Where should we be fishing? We don't want to fish in an ocean where we're scattered. We want to make sure we're fishing in a barrel. We know exactly who our customer is, where they are, and what we need to tell them when we find them. So we'll do that in a couple of ways, which is we're going to define that target market. So demographic, what type of company is it, right? Is there a revenue size? Is there an industry? Geographic, where is that company located? Is it local? Is it regional? Can it be national? Is it global? And lastly, the psychographic, what do our customers value? What matters to them, right? Do they care about customer service? Do they care about price point? What are the things that ultimately matter to this customer? Secondly, we'll then define our three uniques, which are, what are the three differentiating characteristics of this business that make us unique to our competitors? So maybe one or two of these things we do the same as our competition, but the combination of these three make us completely unique. So when we find our customers in our target market, the three uniques is, what do we tell them? Why should they hire us? So those are kind of the two major parts of this marketing strategy. The third part is, what is our proven process, which is a one-page visualization as what does it look like when a customer, walks in the door and signs a contract and starts to onboard and work with us to the end of the process to where maybe they exit the relationship. What does that process look like on one page? And that allows a customer upfront to visualize, what does it actually look like to do business with this company, right? It reduces that fear of adoption. They know what they're getting into. And the last point here is called a guarantee, which is a pledge or a promise that we make to our customers that, again, makes it easier for them to say yes to do business with us. And that guarantee, Domino's or Pizza Hut, I forget which one had one back in the day, where it was, 30 minutes or less, hot pizza on your doorstep. And that was their pledge, right? We're going to do this or we're going to return your money. That guarantee as a customer at Domino's or Pizza Hut made it much less risky for me to say yes, that I'm going to do this, because I knew if I didn't get that hot pizza, I was getting my money back. So those are the 4 points to a marketing strategy, which brings us to the fifth question, which is, what is the company's 3-year picture? So we've got our 10-year picture, right? Our 10-year goal. It's kind of out there. It's far. It's cloudy. We want to bring it closer to the ground. And we're going to do that by defining what would the business need to look like a short 3 years from now to get to that 10-year. So what does revenue need to look like? What does profit need to look like? What are some key measurables that we need to hit? And then ultimately, what are the 5 to 15 things that have to get done that this business has to look like to make that real, right? So do we need to develop strength in a certain department? Do we need to maybe look at a different industry? Do we need to develop some new products or service offerings? Do we need a second office or a third office? What would the business have to look like 3 years from now to really hit that 3-year revenue and profit target? When we go through that exercise, you can really start to visualize what this place needs to look like. That creates that clarity we need to start to develop much more clear action plans and how to get there. So when we get really good at that 3-year picture, it allows us to really set a clear 1-year picture. And what we're going to do next is define, what does that 1-year plan need to look like? So again, we're going to define that revenue target. We'll define a profit target, some measurables. Most importantly, what are the 3 to 7 most important things that this company has to get done over the next 12 months? So 3 to 7, not 27, because if you try to do everything, you'll do nothing, right? Most companies die not because of opportunity, but because of indigestion, right? They take too much on. They try to do too many things. It's the same thing with everybody, with all managers, with all employees. If you try to do too many things, you'll get nothing done. So setting 3 to 7 goals for the company allows us to focus what matters over the next 12 months. We'll then bring that even closer to the ground, right? So we have that 10-year, we've brought it closer with the 3-year. What does it look like? The 1 year says what really matters, 3 to 7 things we have to get done in the next 12 months. And then we're going to set 90-day priorities, which are rocks. So when you hear the word rocks, it's really just 90-day goals. And what we'll do is say, what does the revenue need to look like for this business in the next 90 days? What does profit need to look like in the next 90 days? What does measurables need to look like? And then ultimately, what are the 3 to 7 most important things that this company has to get done over the next 90 days? The same thing is going to happen with the leadership team. So each member of the leadership team is then going to say, what do I need to get done over the next 90 days? Top 3 to 7 things to focus on to really push us towards that vision. As we go into departments and down to teams, everybody eventually is going to set 1 to 3 1 to 3 90-day priorities on what do you have to focus on to help the company achieve its vision. So this is really going to allow the whole business to gain focus, right? To narrow the business down on what really matters over the next 90 days, create a 90-day world, and allow us each to hold each other accountable to getting these things done. The last question is, when you get really clear on a vision, where is the company going? What needs to get done, right? We're going to have issues. We're going to know that there's going to be some things out there that could challenge us, that could hold us back, that are obstacles. And our job as leaders and as managers, as employees of the company, is to bring awareness to what those issues are. We don't want to stuff them down until they boil up and blow up. We want to get them out of our head so that we can talk about them, so that we can address them, so that we can set rocks to solve those problems. So we're going to develop that issues list. And so the leadership team, we've worked on this vision. We've set this vision, right? We've facilitated where are we going? How are we going to get there? What are our issues? And that's allowed us to gain clarity on where the company is going. Now, the second part of this, which you might have started to kind of feel already at this point, is called shared by all, which is we want to make sure that now that we have this grand vision, everybody in the business understands it. They've internalized it. You've bought into it, right? You're able to ask questions on it so you can get clear on it. And ultimately, the way that we're going to get the company to share this vision is by starting to run what we call quarterly State of the Unions. Where somebody on the leadership team is going to bring those 8 questions, that vision traction organizer, and we're going to talk through it every single quarter, right? What are our core values? What's our focus? Where are we going? What's our 10-year? What's our 3-year? How are we doing? How did we do in the last 90 days? Did we hit our goals? Did we not hit our goals? What issues are we facing? So we're going to create that kind of 90-day quarterly State of the Union where the company is bringing our vision to the center. And this allows us all to really understand, again, where are we going? How are we doing? And again, what do we have to get done in the next 90 days? And that allows us to all really internalize, understand that vision, and have clarity on where we're going. So that's how we get 100% strong in the vision component. And again, at this point, we're going to start to be running more of those quarterly State of the Unions. And again, that's why we're here today, right? Is to really understand how this process is going to work. So the second key component in EOS is people. So again, we want to define what a great person looks like to achieve that great vision in our business. And we're going to do that in 2 ways. The first way is, what does a right person look like in our business? So right people, simply put, is a core values fit, right? So again, we talked about that first in the vision component. We need to define those, personality traits, those behavioral traits, those values that resonate in our business, and then understand, does everybody fit those values? Does everyone resonate with those values? Are those values that each of us hold dear within? So the way that we're going to do that is with a tool called the People Analyzer, where again, each quarter we're going to go through and really measure are each of our teams kind of resonating with these values, displaying these values. And if we're not, this allows us to have a really good conversation around where are we missing the mark, or where are some things that we need to strengthen. And so again, this creates that clear communication with our teams to help us understand where are we missing the mark, where are some things that we're strong, where are some things that we can develop. So we want to make sure everybody in the business is the right person, is displaying, resonates, fits those core values. Now, the second part of defining great people is then right seats. Now, right seats means ultimately, do we have the right structure in the business? And so our leadership team went through this process where we really determined, what is the right structure for the business? What are the right seats on the bus, right? What departments do we need in the business to be strong? And when we went through this exercise, we weren't talking about people in the company already. We were saying, for 6 to 12 months looking forward, what is the right structure? What functions have to be strong? Do we need a marketing function that's the same as sales? So marketing and sales is one seat, right, with one person in it? Or do those need to be 2 distinct different functions with 2 leaders on it? So we went through this process of defining what is the right structure for the business looking forward for the next 6 to 12 months. And we customized this structure by then defining what does each seat have to deliver. So what does the marketing and sales seat have to deliver to the business in 5 roles? And again, you're going to start to see some of this with your teams as well, where when we have the right structure, then we want to define what does each seat have to deliver? What are the 5 things that they have to deliver to be successful? And this matters for a couple of reasons, which is number one, we want to create clarity. So again, job descriptions are kind of vague, right? There's a million bullet points, and at the end of the day, it's confusing. There's too much to internalize. When we go through this process and define what are the 5 things that each seat has to deliver, it creates clarity. So each person knows exactly what they have to do to be successful. So the manager knows and the employee knows. They can say the same thing. They know it's these 5 things. There's no disparity between what each person thinks their job is. So we want to create that clarity. So we're going to go through and define what those 5 functions are in each seat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of bring that down throughout the organization so that everybody, not just within the leadership team, everybody knows what the seats need to deliver, what the right seats are, right? What the functions of each seat are, what they're accountable for. And when we go through this process, ultimately, we're going to run into a couple of things, right? A couple of people issues that might jump out at you. The first is we might have, the right person in the wrong seat. So somebody that fits the core values, resonates with them, displays them consistently. But maybe when you read the five accountabilities of the seat, they're in the wrong seat. They're not necessarily good at those things, at those 5 accountabilities. The second issue we're going to run into is, maybe we have somebody that's good at the 5 accountabilities of the seat. They're doing that well, but they necessarily don't fit within the core values. They don't resonate with those. Those values don't resonate with them. They don't display them. That's what a wrong person looks like, right? So these types of issues are going to exist. And our jobs in our business as leaders, as managers, as employees, is to be aware of these people issues and going through these exercises of defining core values and using that people analyzer, of going through the accountability chart and developing the 5 roles of each seat allows us to understand where those issues actually are so we can start to address them. So those are the 2 kinds of people issues. And our job as a business is to make sure that we have 100% right people, right seats. And that's what we're going to be doing here, is kind of bringing clarity to what the structure is, the accountabilities, the values, and then allowing us, as managers, as employees, to make sure that we've got kind of fits there moving forward. So that's 100% strong in the people component. The third key component is data. So we want to make decisions off facts and figures, not egos, opinions, and emotions. And the way that we're going to do that is with a scorecard. So we're going to start with a company scorecard. So the leadership team, and we've developed this at this point, the question is, what are the 5 to 15 most important numbers in your business? I don't want to look at 50 numbers or 100 numbers. It's far too confusing. We want to really distill this down to what are the 5 to 15 things that we ultimately need to be paying attention to that tell us, are we going to be successful or not? So we're going to develop what those 5 to 15 are. Those are measurables. Then what we're going to do is define a goal. So what does each of those numbers need to look like on a weekly basis to know that we're successful or not? So create that clarity. So an example, we have cash balance up here as an example this isn't your leadership teams. This is just an example. Cash balance could be one. It could be the amount of proposals that we're putting out on a weekly basis, the amount of, errors that have been made. These are things, the most important things in our business that we want to track, and we want to make sure that we're hitting a goal every week to know that we are on track. The second part of this is we're then going to define who is ultimately accountable for that number. So each member of the leadership team is now going to be accountable for that measurable. So we're creating clarity for that leader to say, when this isn't on track, it's my job to get it back on track in the next 7 days. So every week, somebody knows exactly what number they're accountable for, and they can push it back on track. And again, that creates that clarity we need. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at these things over 13 weeks, which is a quarter. So what we want to do is we want to see those patterns and trends. Tony Robbins has a great quote that you want to kill the monster when it's small, not when it's eating Tokyo, right? And so when we look at a scorecard over 13 weeks, you can see those patterns and trends. And when we see things sliding off track, we can kill that monster when it's small. We can address it when it's small, get it back on track, not when it's blown up to a bigger issue, when we get surprised at the end of the quarter or year, because now we have this huge problem in our hands. So our goal is to, again, create really patterns and trends, see that, really learn how to predict the future, and then stay focused on keeping the most important numbers on track every single week. Now, the second part of this discipline is when everybody at the leadership team has a scorecard, everyone's then accountable for a number. And we want to push this discipline into the organizations now so that every department has a scorecard. So the sales team will have a scorecard. The marketing team will have a scorecard. Operations will have a scorecard. And then all teams will eventually have a scorecard as well. So you guys will start to be developing these scorecards within your teams and departments as well. And when you do that, we're going to make sure that everybody at least has 1 to 3 measurables that they know that they're accountable for. And what that looks like is we kind of pull back that accountability chart. This top box is the leadership team scorecard. So we've got one scorecard here. And then this next box, this could be the sales scorecard. So the sales team, right? The sales leader and their team has a scorecard. And so ultimately, everybody in the business, again, is going to have a scorecard and be accountable to 1 to 3 measurables. And why this is helpful is because now, again, each person's going to have clarity on what is the number, what is the thing that they got to influence. It creates that clarity, right? Most people feel like uncertain. What do I have to focus on this week? A measurable creates that clarity of here's the number, right? Here's the thing we got to stay focused on. It also ties everybody to the vision. So they know if they're moving this number, they know how it's impacting the vision. So it creates that sense of purpose that, you're just not a nut in a big machine. This is exactly how we can impact the company and impact the vision. So that's what we're going to do with data and with scorecards. That's going to allow us to get 100% strong in the data component. Now, the fourth key component is issues. So when you get really good at the first 3, right, data and people and vision, your issues really jump out at you. We know exactly where our issues are. What we want to do is create that culture of openness, of getting these issues out, getting them in front of us, and learning how to actually problem solve those issues together as a team. So the way that we're going to do that is with 2 disciplines. The first is called an issues list. So issues list, again, it's getting the issues out of our head and onto paper. We don't want these things just keeping us inside and then they bubble up and eventually they blow up. Let's get them out of our heads onto paper and learn how to address them together. So we're going to do that once we get that issues list by using an issue solving track. So this is how we're going to attack each issue. And again, you'll start to use this issue solving track, each of you guys, in your weekly meetings that we're developing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the first part of the issue solving track, we go through a framework called IDS. And IDS stands for identify, D stands for discuss, and S stands for solve. So identify is what is the root of the issue. So when we get the issue on paper, what is causing the issue, right? What is at the crux stemming the issue? Where's it coming from? Discuss is, all right, now that we know what the root issue is, how do we actually solve it? So you guys sitting around the table, here's what I think we could do. Here's a potential solution. And solve is, what are we going to do about this in the next 7 days? So that's how we forward action on an issue. Now, the reality is most people just discuss, right? And this is, you might feel this might resonate with you, but if you've ever gone into a meeting and we didn't know the purpose of the meeting and there was just discussions for an hour and like we talked about a lot of stuff, but it feels like we didn't actually do anything. That's what most people do, right? And that's the discuss phase where it's just you're discussing. We didn't talk about anything important and we didn't really knock anything down. So we want to get away from that. So by going into the IDS world where we step back and say, stop, let's stop discussing. What is the root of the issue? What's causing this issue? Then discussing solutions and then going to solve, which is what are we going to do about it in the next 7 days? That's how we learn how to really talk about important things, get to the root of them and knock them down. So that's the IDS framework. How this is going to work in reality in like a weekly meeting is we're going to have that issues list. You can see we've got our issues list. And then we want to learn how to prioritize the most important issues. So again, the way that we're going to do that is we're going to say, what are the top 3 issues on this issues list? So you're going to say number 1, number 2, and number 3. So that allows us to prioritize. Again, we're not just talking about the most urgent thing or the easiest thing. It's what is the most important thing. So we want to spend these meetings talking about important things, not urgent, not easy things. So once we get the top 3, then we're going to jump into number 1 and say, what is the root, right? Like, let's identify what is causing this issue. We're going to get to the root of it. Then once we got to the root of it, we're going to go around the room. What can we do about this? What are some potential opportunities or solutions? And then we're going to move it to a solve, which is ultimately, what are we going to do about this in the next 7 days? So this is going to allow us, again, to forward action. And when we do that, what you'll start to see is each meeting is going to be much more impactful. You're going to feel like we actually solved things. We got to the root of important things. We gained traction, right? Like this wasn't a waste of a meeting. And hopefully you'll start to enjoy coming to meetings much more. Once we solve one, we'll go to number two, IDS it, knock it down, go to number three, and then reprioritize the list. So that's the issue solving track. That's how we learn how to really focus on getting to the root of these issues and knocking them down. And again, we'll talk about how do you do this on a weekly basis in the sixth key component. So we'll get there in a minute. Now, the fifth key component is process. So process is all about doing the most important things the right and best way every single time. Again, that's what creates scalability, more profitable, makes things easier to manage, much more consistent. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to go through the first discipline is documenting those processes. The way that we do that is we start with what are the handful of core processes that drive the business. So ultimately, you can boil that down to about 6 to 10 things that ultimately drive the business. For example, the first could be a people process, an HR process. How do we find the right type of people that reflect our values, that are good at their job, that can do the things, the 5 accountabilities of the C? How do we find them? How do we interview them? How do we bring them in? How do we onboard and train them? How do we performance manage, do reviews, and then exit interviews, that type of stuff? That's one process. The second process could be a marketing process, which is, how do we resonate out in the world? How do we go find more of the right types of customers? How do we generate leads? How do we get our branding and imaging out? That's one process. And sales is how do we find the right types of customers and what's the proposal conversation look like? And then how do we onboard them and service them? That's one process. You get the point. So there are 6 to 10 processes that ultimately drive a business. We want to get clarity on what those are. Then what we want to do is we want to document those processes. So we're going to document them using the 20/80 approach. So 20/80 means you're going to document 20% of the steps that drive 80% of the outcomes. So we don't want to document every single step. This isn't a how-to manual, right? We don't want to create a 700-page manual that no one ever looks at, shoved into a desk because it's so overwhelming. The 20/80 approach allows us to take those 6 to 10 and in really like 2 to 5 pages, get those processes to paper. And so at the end of the day, we should have a document of about 25 to 30 pages that is really how we do business, right? What does it look like to run this sales process? How do we run these ops processes, et cetera? So this is great throughout the organization because everybody knows now the right way to do things. It doesn't create ambiguity. If you're somebody that's a new hire, you can get 80% of the way there without having a ton of training because you know how to do things. You just go to that process doc. These are the steps I need to take. And when we do that, it makes things much easier to manage, much more scalable, much more consistent. So this is kind of what it's going to look like, right? People process. What are the major steps? 20% of the steps, and we get those documented. And we're going to move on. People processes, sales processes, go through all 6 to 10. And when we do that, then the second part of this is going to be the second component, the second discipline to get strong in process component is followed by all. So now we have our processes identified and documented. We want everybody in the business to follow these processes. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to make sure that everybody is trained on these processes, that we're measuring, are these processes actually working? So we'll have some numbers on the scorecard that tell us, is a sales process working? Is an ops process working? All of these things. Third is going to be lead, manage, accountable. LMA stands for lead, manage, accountable. So when we're not doing these processes, we can point people back and hold them accountable. Here's the right way to do it, right? Bring them back to the process. And lastly is we're updating these processes as the company grows and changes and the market changes, keeping these things updated. So that's how we get 100% strong in the process component. Lastly is the 6th key component is traction, right? So again, I mentioned earlier, vision's easy, right? It's easy to facilitate the vision. We have the vision. Like you guys have probably seen the vision at this point through that quarterly State of the Union. If you haven't, you're probably about to see it. So that stuff's easy, but then developing the discipline and habits and focus and accountability in the business to make that vision real, that's hard, right? And that's called gaining traction. So the way that we gain traction is 2 ways. The first is rocks, right? And we talked about rocks in the vision component, but we want to create a 90-day world in the business where everybody is accountable for 90-day priorities, right? For those rocks, those 90-day goals that we're going to set. So we're going to take this vision and we're going to say, what are the most important things over the next 90 days? The company will define that. Each leader is going to define that for their departments. And each person is going to define what are those 1 to 3 most important things that I have to get done in the next 90 days. And that creates focus throughout the whole organization. So everybody is working in sync in 90-day sprints. When we get done with the 90 days, we'll poke our heads up, right? Your leadership team is going to meet with me. I'm going to push them and hold them accountable. Did you do the things you said you were going to do? How did we do on those goals? And then we're going to reset the priorities for the next 90 days. So we're going to create that 90-day world. Now, the second part of this is, setting 90-day goals isn't enough, right? If we just set 90-day goals and there's no communication, we're going to get to the end of 90 days and those things aren't going to get done, right? So there's no opportunity to talk through issues or get things back on track if they've fallen off track. So the second part of this is creating a meeting pulse. And the meeting pulse is essentially a weekly meeting pulse that we're going to develop throughout your organization. Now, your leadership team has this already. We've developed what we call a level 10 meeting. And this level 10 meeting allows us to gain traction on that vision. And so the agenda that this level 10 meeting goes through starts with, we're going to start off with 5 minutes of good news, right? So we're going to ease into the meeting, brings humanity to us, as leaders. Sometimes we can get stuck in the weeds of running a business that's frustrating. Pull our heads out. Let's bring some humanity. What's going on that's good in the world and with our, personal lives, with our business. Then we're going to jump into the meeting, right? And start to really get into it. So the next 15 minutes, we call the reporting section. So we're going to pull up our scorecard, right? Again, the leadership team is doing this right now. So the leadership team pulls up their leadership team scorecard. Each person is reading their measurable. Is it on track or off track? Every week, anything that's off track, we mark as off track, and we drop down to the issues list section. So we're starting to build that issues list from the issues component. The second thing is each leader is going to bring up their rocks. Are these on track or off track? Anything that's off track gets dropped down to the issues list. Third thing is what's going on with our customers and employees? Are there any issues here? Are there any opportunities, things that need to be, talked about with the leadership team? Any issues there, drop down to the issues list. So in that first 15 minutes, we've talked about the most important things in the business. How are our numbers trending? The most important numbers. How are our goals trending? Are they on track? Are they off track? What's going on with our customers and employees? This gives us in 15 minutes a pulse. What's going on in the business and what are our issues? And we build our issues list based off that. So again, the leadership team is doing that right now. Now, as we roll this level 10 meeting into the departments, down into the teams, you guys will also be doing this, right? Pulling up your own scorecards, pulling up your own priorities, right? Discussing what's going on with your customers and employees. So this will, again, give you that focus on reporting on the most important things. And the whole point of this meeting is then to spend 60 minutes, right? Leadership team spending 60 minutes. Yours may be a little bit, maybe smaller, maybe larger, depending on what works for your department. So you'll figure that out as we roll this out. But the point of this meeting is to spend time solving issues. So we know what numbers are trending off. We know what rocks are trending off. Our priorities are trending off. And this gives us an opportunity as a team to work together to problem solve. So use that IDS framework, prioritize. What are the most important issues? How do we get to the root of those? What help do we need? How do we get these things back on track? And so when you run this meeting every single week, it gives everybody incredible focus to work together to solve the most important things. And again, people love this, especially as you get, this really into the teams and departments. People love it because we're creating problem solvers. We're creating meetings where there's an opportunity, if you're struggling, to voice your issue and get help from the collective brain trust that's around you. So when we get through those issues, the reason I skipped to-dos, which sits above the issues list, is because the solves from each of these issues get assigned as to-dos. So the 7-day actions get added to that to-do list, and we'll read the to-do list from last week's to-dos. Was it done or not done? So that allows us to inject a little bit of accountability into the business. So that's the level 10 meeting, right? We're going to then conclude the meeting, 5 minutes. We'll rate the meeting 1 through 10. Right? How was this meeting? That's why it's called a level 10 meeting, because most companies start and they rate their meetings, a 2 or a 3, even a 4 out of 10. When you get this meeting cadence right and humming, and just for expectations, it takes like 12 to 24 weeks before you really start to feel this works really well and you've learned the format. But then you start to see this meeting start to creep up to an 8, 9, and a 10 in rating. So that's why we call it a level 10 meeting. People generally love this meeting. we're solving important issues, and it feels like we're really using the collective brain power of the group. That's how we get 100% strong in the traction component. So those are the 6 key components of EOS, right? Everything we are doing, right? This process that I'm bringing your leadership team, the tools that we're rolling into the business, everything that we are doing is to get strong in these 6 key components. And you remember, again, prior to this process, we're playing whack-a-mole, we're dealing with 150 issues. If we just gain strength in these 6, right, and we roll these tools into the business, we should be start to have a much more proactive business that isn't just reacting and playing whack-a-mole with issues. And we should be able to grow and create much more opportunities for everyone in the business. That's our goal here. So the process. So what is the process that the team is actually going through right now? So we started with a 90-minute meeting where your leadership team, they met with me. We talked about really what is EOS? What is the toolbox? How does it work? Right? A lot of what we just went through right now is what the leadership team went through. And the goal was like, can this be helpful? Right? Can this be helpful to help you guys continue to grow and get to the next level? And everybody said, yeah, we do think this is helpful, right? We think these are the toolbox, the tool set that can help us achieve what we're going for and really grow and continue to provide opportunity within the organization. So then we started with a focus day with the leadership team. So this was a first day, full day, 7, 8 hours. And what we did was we talked through the concept of hitting the ceiling and then really started to develop the accountability chart for the leadership team. So what's the right structure? What does each seat have to deliver to the organization, right? Really talk about who is in that seat. So that really helped us crystallize our business, make sure that we had the right structure as we looked forward 6 to 12 months. The second thing we did was we developed what are the most important priorities for the company and then for each leader. We developed those. The third thing we did was we developed the meeting pulse. So the next week we started running that within the leadership team. And lastly, we developed the first version of our leadership team scorecard. The second day, which was 30 days later, again, full day, 7, 8 hours, we talked about, the tools from day one. Did we get the accountability chart right? Are our rocks on track? Is the meeting pulse working or is it not? We're tweaking that stuff. Scorecard, any adjustments we'll make. But the majority of the day was then setting the vision. So what are our core values, our core focus, our 10-year target, right? That was in that first vision day. 30 days later, we went into vision building 2. So again, we looked at the tools from day 1 again in the morning. So accountability charts, is this the right structure? Did we get our rocks done or not? Our meeting pulse. Is it working? Is it not? What do we have to tweak? And then looked at the scorecard and made sure we got that right. And then we finished our vision, right, in that second vision building day. So we finished with our marketing strategy, our 3-year picture, our 10-year plan, and our quarterly rocks. So out of those first 3 days, that kind of brought us through day 60. We developed where is the company going, right? What is our vision and how are we going to get there? And then we developed the tool set, the habits, the disciplines within the business to gain traction on that vision, right? That accountability chart, rocks, meeting pulse, and scorecard. Coming out of those 60 days, that was all about changing habits, developing focus, developing a vision in the leadership team. So you guys probably hadn't heard anything or felt too much at that time. Now what we're doing is we slowed down and we went to a quarterly world. So now we're meeting every 90 days. And in this 90 days, this is where we're really starting to roll these tools and disciplines out to the business. And so we started with a quarterly State of the Union, right? Introduction to EOS to the whole company, a vision to the whole company, right? So we really started to roll that vision out, get people aware of where we're going. Now we're going to start running those quarterly State of the Unions every single quarter. And in this quarterly world, as the leadership team, as we're meeting together, as I'm meeting with your leadership team, now we're going to start to roll some of these tools out to you guys, right? So we're going to start setting rocks. We're going to develop some scorecards at department levels. We're going to help you develop your accountability chart, right? And make sure that we have the right structure and the right roles of these seats, help create clarity within your teams on who's accountable for what. So over the next couple of quarters, we're really going to start to roll this stuff out. And ultimately, there's a 2-day annual that we run at the end of kind of the year with the leadership team. And this allows us to kind of reassess our vision every single year and say, is this still where we're going? So we're in this quarterly world now with the leadership team where we're meeting every single quarter until these tools are really rolled into the business and we feel like we're 80% strong in those 6 key components. On average, the EOS journey, me as a coach, it takes us about 2 years-ish to really feel like these tools are not just at the leadership team level, but they're really throughout the business. Everybody has these tools and disciplines, and we feel like the business is a well-oiled machine. That's the journey that we are going on. The leadership team is going on, is taking these tools, learning them, getting strong, pushing them throughout the organization. And when they're 80% strong, saying, Dan, we are good, we don't need you anymore, right? And you guys graduate the process and you just go at it, right? You do it by yourselves. It's second nature at that point. So that's the journey that we're going on. And again, it's 2 years, it's a kind of a 2-year journey because we're changing the way we do business, right? We want to grow. We want to capture more opportunity. We want to create more opportunities for growth within our company. It doesn't require us to change some of the habits, and that takes time, right? We want to make sure that we're changing in a way that's digestible to everybody in the organization. And so that's the journey that we're going on together. If you guys have any questions, your leadership team has my contact information. You can reach out to me at any time. And the good news is, I work with a cohort of coaches here in Connecticut. We also offer trainings every quarter that are available to all of our clients, that are available to all managers within our clients. And so the next one we have coming up is going to be in a couple of months here. And it's called Lead the Way, and it'll allow you guys to get deeper into how to use these tools and train you on the tools. So keep an eye out for that stuff. It's great. And yeah, that's what I got for you. So it's nice to meet everybody. I am super excited to continue the process of bringing these tools and disciplines to your organization. And it's going to be an amazing journey of growth as we continue to kind of get to that next level and continue to break through ceilings. So thanks for your time. And again, reach out if you have any questions.